The Mystery of Moonlight Valley. Dylan and Noah Rivers were not like other brothers. They shared something special that nobody could explain. When one felt happy, the other smiled too. When one got hurt, the other felt the pain. Their parents always said they were connected by invisible threads. The twins lived in a small town called Moonlight Valley. It was a quiet place where everyone knew everyone. The town sat between tall mountains and had a lake that sparkled like diamonds in the sunlight. People said strange things happened in Moonlight Valley, but most folks just laughed at those stories. Dylan was the careful brother. He liked to think before he did anything. He loved reading books and solving puzzles. His room was always clean and organized. Noah was different. He loved adventure and trying new things. He would jump first and think later. His room was always messy, but he could find anything he needed. The brothers worked at the town library. Dylan helped people find books and answered questions. Noah ran the computer lab and taught kids how to use technology. They both loved their jobs because they could help people learn new things. On the other side of town lived two sisters named Sophie and Lauren Carter. Like the Rivers twins, these sisters were very close. But they were as different as night and day. Sophie was like Dylan in many ways. She was calm and liked to plan everything. She worked as a teacher at the elementary school. All the children loved her because she was patient and kind. She could explain hard things in ways that made sense. Lauren was full of energy like Noah. She worked as a photographer for the town newspaper. She loved taking pictures of everything: people, animals, buildings, and nature. Lauren was always moving around town with her camera, looking for the perfect shot. The Carter sisters lived in a blue house with a big garden. Sophie grew vegetables and flowers. Lauren took pictures of everything that grew in the garden. They spent their evenings on the porch, watching the sunset over the mountains. One day, something strange started happening in Moonlight Valley. People began having the same dream every night. In the dream, they saw a bright light coming from the old cave up in the mountains. The cave had been closed for 50 years because it was dangerous. At first, only a few people talked about the dream. But soon, almost everyone in town was having it. The dream felt so real that people woke up thinking they had actually been to the cave. Dylan heard about the dreams at the library. People came in asking for books about caves and dreams. They wanted to understand what was happening. Dylan became very interested in this mystery. Noah heard about it too. Kids in his computer class kept talking about the strange dreams. They were scared but also excited. Noah thought it sounded like an adventure waiting to happen. Sophie's students were having trouble sleeping because of the dreams. She was worried about them. She started researching dreams and their meanings. She wanted to help her students understand that dreams couldn't hurt them. Lauren was fascinated by the whole thing. She wanted to take pictures of the cave, but it was too dangerous to go alone. She had never seen anything like this happen in their peaceful town. One evening, Dylan and Noah were walking home from work when they bumped into Sophie and Lauren at the town square. The four of them had seen each other around town but had never really talked. "Excuse me," Dylan said politely when he accidentally stepped on Sophie's foot. "I'm sorry about that." Sophie smiled. "It's okay. I wasn't watching where I was going either." Meanwhile, Noah was looking at Lauren's camera. "That's a really nice camera. Do you take pictures for work?" Lauren nodded. "I work for the newspaper. I'm Lauren Carter, and this is my sister Sophie." "I'm Noah Rivers, and this is my brother Dylan," Noah replied. The four of them started talking about the strange dreams that were happening in town. They discovered they all wanted to understand what was going on. "I think we should investigate this together," Noah suggested. "For people working together can figure out more than four people working alone." Dylan was not sure. "The cave is dangerous. People say it's been closed for good reasons." Sophie agreed with Dylan. "We should be careful, but maybe we can research the history of the cave first." Lauren was excited. "I could take pictures of everything we find. This could be the biggest story our town has ever had." They decided to meet at the library the next day to start their investigation. Dylan knew where to find all the old books and records about the town. Sophie was good at organizing information. Noah could use computers to find more recent information. Lauren could document everything with her camera. The next morning, they met at the library before it opened. Dylan had keys because he worked there. They gathered around a big table in the research room and started looking for information about the cave. Dylan found an old book from 1970 that talked about the cave. It said that strange lights had been seen coming from the cave for many years. But in 1975, there was an accident. Some teenagers went into the cave and got lost. Took 3 days to find them. After that, the town decided to seal the cave entrance. Sophie found records from the school. She discovered that in 1975, right before the cave was closed, students had been having strange dreams. The dreams were exactly like the ones people were having now. Noah used the computer to search for scientific explanations. He found information about underground crystals that could create light. He also found stories about electromagnetic fields that might affect people's dreams. Lauren took pictures of everything they found. She photographed the old books, the school records, and Noah's computer res. She wanted to have proof of everything they discovered. After 3 hours of research, they had learned a lot. But they still didn't understand why the dreams were happening again after 50 years. Maybe we need to talk to someone who was here in 1975, Sophie suggested. Dylan remembered something. Mrs. Patterson, the old librarian, worked here in 1975. She retired 10 years ago, but she still lives in town. They decided to visit Mrs. Patterson that afternoon. She lived in a small house near the lake. When they knocked on her door, she invited them in for tea. Mrs. Patterson was 85 years old, but her memory was very sharp. She remembered the events of 1975 very well. "Oh yes, I remember those dreams," she said, pouring tea into 4 cups. Everyone in town was having them. It was very strange. She told them that the dreams had started exactly 50 years ago, in the same month they were happening now. The dreams continued for 3 months, then suddenly stopped after the teenagers got lost in the cave. "Do you know why the teenagers went into the cave?" Lauren asked. Mrs. Patterson nodded. "They said the dreams were calling them there. They felt like they had to go. It was like the cave was pulling them in." Dylan felt a chill. "Are you saying the cave somehow causes the dreams?" "I don't know for sure," Mrs. Patterson replied. "But I do know that after the cave was sealed, the dreams stopped completely. Until now." Sophie had another question. "Do you think the seal on the cave might be broken?" Mrs. Patterson thought for a moment. "It's possible. There was a big storm last month with lots of rain and wind. Maybe it damaged the seal." Noah was getting excited. "So if we check the cave entrance, we might find out if the seal is broken." Dylan was still worried. "But what if it's dangerous? What if the same thing happens to us that happened to those teenagers?" Lauren had an idea. "What if we don't go into the cave? What if we just look at the entrance from a safe distance? I could take pictures with my zoom lens." Sophie agreed. "We could hike up to where we can see the cave entrance but stay far enough away to be safe." Mrs. Patterson looked at them seriously. "If you do decide to go, please be very careful. And tell someone where you're going. Those teenagers in 1975 didn't tell anyone, and that made it harder to find them when they got lost." They thanked Mrs. Patterson for her help and promised to be careful. As they walked back to town, they talked about what they had learned. "I think we should go tomorrow morning," Noah said. "The weather forecast is good, and we'll have plenty of daylight." Dylan was still nervous, but he was also curious. "Okay, but we stick together the whole time, and we turn back if anything seems dangerous." Sophie and Lauren agreed. They would meet early in the morning and hike up to get a view of the cave entrance. That night, all 4 of them had the dream again. But this time, the dream was different. Instead of just seeing light from the cave, they could hear something too. It sounded like music, but not like any music they had ever heard before. When they met the next morning, they were all excited to tell each other about the music in their dreams. They packed water, snacks, and Lauren's camera equipment. Sophie brought a first aid kit, and Dylan brought a map of the mountain trails. The hike took 2 hours. The trail wound through thick forest and over rocky ground. As they got higher up the mountain, they could see more of Moonlight Valley below them. The view was beautiful, but they were all thinking about the cave. Finally, they reached a clearing where they could see across to the mountain where the cave was located. Lauren set up her camera with the zoom lens and looked through it. "I can see the cave entrance," she said excitedly. "And you're right, the seal is definitely broken. There's a big opening where the rocks used to be." They took turns looking through the camera. The opening was large enough for people to walk through. They could see that rocks and metal barriers that had once blocked the entrance were now scattered around the ground. Dylan studied the map. According to this, there's a trail that goes right to the cave entrance. It would take about an hour to hike there from here. Noah was eager to get closer. "We could just go a little bit closer. We don't have to go inside." Sophie was thinking about her students. If the broken seal is causing the dreams, maybe we need to understand more about what's in the cave. The dreams are really bothering the children. Lauren was already taking pictures of the cave entrance with her zoom lens. "I'm getting some good shots, but we'd get much better pictures if we were closer." They decided to hike closer to the cave, but they promised each other they would stop at least 50 feet away from the entrance. They would not go inside under any circumstances. The trail to the cave was overgrown because nobody had used it for 50 years. They had to push through bushes and climb over fallen trees. But they helped each other, and after an hour, they could see the cave entrance clearly. As they got closer, they noticed something strange. There was definitely light coming from deep inside the cave. It wasn't bright sunlight. It was a soft, blue-green glow that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. "That's definitely not natural light," Dylan observed. Sophie was fascinated. "It looks exactly like the light from our dreams." Noah pointed to the ground near the cave entrance. "Look at those footprints. Someone else has been here recently." Lauren took pictures of the footprints and the glowing light. "These footprints look fresh. Maybe from yesterday or today." They stayed 50 feet away from the entrance as they had promised. But they could hear something now. It was the same music from their dreams, but much clearer. It was beautiful and haunting at the same time. Dylan felt a strong urge to walk toward the cave. "Do you guys feel that? It's like something is calling us." Noah nodded. "Yeah, I feel it too. It's hard to resist." Sophie grabbed both of their arms. "This must be what happened to those teenagers in 1975. We need to leave now before we can't control ourselves." Lauren was still taking pictures, but she was also feeling the pull of the cave. "Just a few more shots, then we'll go." But as she was taking pictures, she noticed something in her camera viewfinder. There were people inside the cave. She could see shadows moving in the glowing light. "There are people in there," she whispered urgently. They all looked toward the cave entrance. Now they could see the shadows too. Someone was definitely inside the cave, and they seemed to be moving deeper into the cave system. Noah started walking toward the cave. "We have to help them. They might be lost like those teenagers in 1975. Dylan tried to stop him. "Noah, no. We promised we wouldn't go in." But Noah was already walking toward the entrance. The pull of the cave was too strong for him to resist. Sophie and Lauren ran after him, trying to stop him. Dylan followed, not wanting to leave his brother. As they got closer to the entrance, the music got louder and more beautiful. The glowing light seemed to welcome them. Against their better judgment, they found themselves walking into the cave. Inside, the cave was bigger than they had expected. The walls were covered with crystals that gave off the soft blue-green light. The music seemed to come from the crystals themselves, creating a melody that was both peaceful and mysterious. They could see footprints in the sandy floor of the cave, leading deeper into the mountain. Fresh footprints, just like the ones they had seen outside. "Hello," Dylan called out. "Is anyone there? Are you okay?" His voice echoed through the cave tunnels. After a few seconds, they heard a voice calling back. "Help us. We're lost." The voice was coming from deeper in the cave. Without thinking, all four of them started following the footprints toward the sound. As they walked deeper, the crystals on the walls got brighter. The music got more complex, with layers of harmony that seemed to tell a story. Lauren kept taking pictures, documenting everything they saw. After 10 minutes of walking, they found the source of the voice. It was a group of 3 teenagers about 16 years old. They were sitting in a large chamber filled with the most beautiful crystals they had ever seen. "Thank goodness you found us," said one of the teenagers, a girl with long brown hair. "We've been wandering around in here for hours." "How did you get lost?" Sophie asked, immediately switching into her teacher mode. A boy with red hair answered. "We came in this morning to see what was causing the dreams. We were only going to look around for a few minutes, but then we got turned around. Every tunnel looks the same." The third teenager, another boy, was staring at the crystals on the walls. "But look at this place. It's incredible. The crystals are singing." Dylan, Noah, Sophie, and Lauren looked around the chamber they were in. It was enormous, with a ceiling that disappeared into darkness above them. The walls were completely covered with crystals of different sizes and colors. And the teenagers were right, the crystals were definitely making music. "We need to get everyone out of here," Dylan said. "This place might be dangerous." But Noah was fascinated by the crystals. "Look at how they're arranged. It's like they're organized in some kind of pattern." Sophie was studying the crystals too. "The pattern looks like it might be some kind of map or diagram." Lauren was taking pictures of everything. "This is amazing. These crystals must be what's causing the dreams. Maybe they send out some kind of signal that affects people's brains when they sleep." One of the teenagers, the girl with brown hair, said her name was Emma. "We figured out something about the dreams. They're not random. They're trying to tell us something." The red-haired boy was named Jake. "Emma's right. The dreams show us the way to this chamber. They're like instructions." The third teenager was named Chris. "But we can't figure out what we're supposed to do once we get here." Dylan was getting worried. "Maybe we're not supposed to do anything. Maybe we should just leave and seal the cave again." But as he said that, something happened. The crystals started glowing brighter, and the music got louder. In the center of the chamber, a section of the floor began to glow with golden light. "Look!" Sophie pointed to the glowing floor. "There's something under there." They all gathered around the glowing section. As they watched, the golden light formed shapes and symbols that seemed to move and change. Lauren was taking pictures as fast as she could. "It's like the floor is trying to show us something." Emma, the teenager who had been studying the crystals, had an idea. "What if we're supposed to stand on the glowing symbols? What if that's what the dreams were trying to tell us?" Jake and Chris looked at each other nervously. "What if it's dangerous?" Noah, always ready for adventure, stepped forward. "Only one way to find out." Dylan grabbed his arm. "Noah, wait. We don't know what will happen." But as they were talking, the golden light got brighter, and the music from the crystals became more urgent. It was as if the cave was trying to communicate with them. Sophie, using her teacher instincts, tried to understand the pattern. "Look at the symbols. They're not random. They look like they're showing us where each person should stand." She was right. The symbols on the floor seemed to indicate 7 positions, exactly the right number for their group. Lauren looked at her camera screen, reviewing the pictures she had taken. "In all my pictures, the crystals are pointing toward these exact spots on the floor. It's like they're guiding us here." Emma made a decision. "I think we should trust it. The dreams brought us here for a reason. Maybe this is what we're supposed to do." One by one, they each stepped onto a glowing symbol. Dylan was nervous but stayed close to Noah. Sophie and Lauren held hands. Emma, Jake, and Chris stood on their symbols too. As soon as all 7 of them were in position, something magical happened. The entire chamber filled with warm, golden light. The music from the crystals became a beautiful symphony that seemed to surround them. But more than that, they could suddenly see images in the light around them. Images of Moonlight Valley from long ago, when it was first settled. They saw the people who had lived there before, people who had discovered the cave and its crystals. The images showed them that the crystals were not just pretty rocks. They were like a library, storing memories and knowledge from everyone who had ever lived in the valley. The dreams were the crystals' way of calling people to come and add their own memories to the collection. For generations, people had been coming to the cave to share their stories with the crystals. But 50 years ago, when the teenagers got lost, people became afraid and sealed the cave. The crystals had been waiting ever since for someone to return. Now the crystals were full of stored memories, and they needed to share them with the people of Moonlight Valley. The dreams were their way of asking for help. As the 7 of them stood on the glowing symbols, they could feel the crystals connecting with their minds. It wasn't scary. It was like having a conversation with very old, very wise friends. The crystals showed them memories of the town's history that had been forgotten. They saw how the early settlers had worked together to build the community. They saw how people had helped each other through difficult times. They saw celebrations and traditions that had been lost over the years. Dylan realized what was happening. The crystals want us to take these memories back to the town. They want people to remember their history. Sophie understood too. And they want us to help them record new memories. That's why the dreams are happening now. The town needs to reconnect with its past. Noah was excited. So we're like messengers between the crystals and the people. Lauren was still taking pictures, but now she could see that her camera was capturing more than just images. It was somehow recording the memories too. Emma, Jake, and Chris were amazed by what they were experiencing. They had come to the cave looking for adventure, but they had found something much more important. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the golden light began to fade. The music from the crystals became soft and peaceful again. The connection with the crystal library gently ended. But they all knew they had been changed by the experience. They now carried the memories and wisdom of generations of people who had lived in Moonlight Valley. "We need to get back to town," Dylan said. "We have to tell people what we learned." Sophie was already thinking like a teacher. "We can help the town remember its history. We can bring the community together again." Noah was planning adventures. "We can organize events and celebrations based on the old traditions the crystals showed us." Lauren was excited about her pictures. "I can create an exhibition showing the history of the town. People will be amazed by what we discovered." Emma, Jake, and Chris promised to help spread the word to people their age. They understood now that the cave wasn't dangerous. It was a gift to their community. As they walked back through the cave toward the entrance, the crystals continued to glow softly, as if saying goodbye. The music followed them, a gentle melody that seemed to promise they would always be welcome to return. When they finally emerged from the cave into the afternoon sunlight, they all felt different. They had gone into the cave as strangers, but they came out as friends united by an extraordinary experience. The hike back to town gave them time to talk about what they had learned and what they wanted to do next. They agreed to work together to help Moonlight Valley rediscover its rich history and traditions. That evening, they called a town meeting at the community center. Word spread quickly about their discovery, and almost everyone in town came to hear what they had found. Dylan, Noah, Sophie, and Lauren took turns explaining what had happened. They showed Lauren's photographs and described the crystal library they had discovered. Emma, Jake, and Chris backed up their story and encouraged other young people not to be afraid of the cave. The reaction from the townspeople was mixed at first. Some were skeptical, thinking it all sounded too strange to be true. Others were excited about the historical discoveries. A few were still worried about the safety of the cave. But then something happened that convinced everyone. Mrs. Patterson, the old librarian, stood up and spoke. "I believe these young people," she said in her clear, strong voice. "In 1975, we were afraid because we didn't understand. We thought the cave was dangerous because those teenagers got lost. But maybe they got lost because they weren't ready to understand what the crystals were trying to show them." She looked around the room at all the faces. These 7 worked together. They helped each other. And they came back with a gift for all of us, our own history. After Mrs. Patterson spoke, the mood in the room changed. People began to get excited about the possibilities. They started sharing their own family stories and memories that connected to what the young people had discovered. Over the next few weeks, amazing things began to happen in Moonlight Valley. People started working together in ways they hadn't for years. Lauren's photograph exhibition drew visitors from other towns who wanted to learn about the Crystal Cave. Sophie organized educational programs to teach children about their town's history. Dylan and Noah helped set up guided tours to the cave entrance, but not inside, that remained a special place for those who were called by the dreams. The teenagers, Emma, Jake, and Chris, became junior historians, collecting stories from older residents and sharing them with their classmates. But most importantly, the dreams stopped being scary. Now that people understood what they meant, the dreams became pleasant visits with the Crystal Library. People would wake up feeling connected to their community and its history. Dylan and Sophie discovered they worked well together. Their careful, thoughtful approach to problems made them a good team. They spent long hours organizing historical documents and planning educational programs. Noah and Lauren found they shared a love of adventure and discovery. They explored other parts of the mountain, always looking for new stories to tell and new places to photograph. As the months passed, Dylan and Sophie grew closer. Their quiet conversations on library steps became dinner dates at the small restaurant by the lake. Their shared love of learning and teaching created a strong bond between them. Noah and Lauren's relationship was more like a whirlwind. They took weekend trips to nearby towns, went on photography expeditions, and were always planning their next adventure together. The four friends worked as a team to make Moonlight Valley a more connected community. They organized monthly festivals based on historical traditions, started a local history museum, and even convinced the state to recognize the Crystal Cave as a protected historical site. 1 year after their first visit to the cave, Dylan and Sophie were married in a ceremony beside the lake. The crystals in the cave glowed brightly that day, as if celebrating with them. 6 months later, Noah and Lauren had their wedding in the meadow where the town's first settlers had built their homes. The whole community came to celebrate, and even visitors from other towns attended. As the years went by, the four friends continued their work preserving and sharing the history of Moonlight Valley. Dylan and Sophie had children who grew up hearing stories of the Crystal Cave. Noah and Lauren traveled to other small towns, helping them discover and preserve their own hidden histories. The Crystal Cave remained a special place. People still had dreams that called them there, but now they understood the dreams were invitations to learn and to contribute their own stories to the collection. Children who grew up in Moonlight Valley learned to respect the cave and its crystals. They understood that some places are magical not because they're dangerous, but because they connect us to something bigger than ourselves. Dylan and Noah remained as close as ever, their special connection strengthened by their shared adventure. Sophie and Lauren became true sisters, their different personalities complementing each other perfectly. And the town of Moonlight Valley became known throughout the region as a place where history was alive, where community mattered, and where sometimes, if you listened carefully to your dreams, you might discover something wonderful. The crystals continued to sing their ancient songs, preserving the memories of all who had lived in the valley and welcoming the stories of all who would come after. The mystery had been solved, but the magic remained. On quiet evenings, when the four friends sat together watching the sunset over the lake, they sometimes talked about that first day when they bumped into each other in the town square. None of them could have imagined then how much their lives would change, or how a mysterious cave full of singing crystals would bring them together and transform their entire community. But that's how the best adventures begin, with ordinary people doing ordinary things, until something extraordinary calls them to discover what they never knew they were looking for. And in Moonlight Valley, where the crystals still sing their ancient songs and the dreams still carry messages of connection and community, the story continues. Because some mysteries, once solved, become the beginning of even greater adventures. The townspeople learned that the most powerful magic isn't found in spells or potions, but in the connections we make with each other and with the history that shaped us. The Crystal Cave had taught them that every person's story matters, and that when we share our stories, we create something beautiful that can last forever. As for Dylan and Noah, Sophie and Lauren, they discovered that the strongest bonds are forged not just in good times, but in moments when we choose to trust each other and work together towards something greater than ourselves. And sometimes, late at night when the moon shines bright over Moonlight Valley, people say you can still hear the faint sound of crystal music carried on the wind, reminding everyone that magic is real, and it lives in the connections between us all.